Okay, I know I missed last month, but August was full of like birthdays, and I spent quite a lot of time with my partner because she was moving to university, so we just sort of had a bit of a celebration and stuff like that. And her birthday's in that month, and my birthday's in that month, and so we ended up doing a bunch of stuff with various families and friends and stuff. And then at the beginning of September, when I'd have been making what would have been quite a short video on what I played in August, my grandmother passed away, so I wasn't really in a fit state to be doing stuff. So then I spent September dealing with that, and also catching up a bit on the games that I played. So between all of that, work hunting, and a little bit of contract work, I've still not had much time to play games, but 2 months does work out to at least a reasonable length video, especially if I waffle a lot about one of the games. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. I started Dragon Age Origins a few days before the release of Baldur's Gate 3 by sheer coincidence, but it was very interesting to see people online who were playing Baldur's Gate mentioning Dragon Age and harkening back to their first time playing it in the late 2000s. That being said, I'm not about to give a glowing endorsement, I'm afraid. The setting is very Lord of the Rings, and the environment design, the music, and even in some ways the party of unlikely adventurers, they're just very reminiscent. I'm aware this is a common trope of the genre, but something about this feels particularly Lord of the Rings to me. Now, that's not a criticism, just an observation. On that note, the music is lovely, with the exception of the music used in the Demon World kind of place, which I can't remember the name of. It regularly uses the waterphone sound effect, and I therefore cannot listen to it without laughing. The game crashes a lot, unless you install a 4GB patch for it, and a lot of quests feel really padded and dragged out. This has largely killed my desire to go back to it, as it's taken me nearly 30 hours to get one of the 4 guys I need to get for the final battle, and a lot of that time was spent running dungeons. It might be a consequence of the way I'm playing the game, but it feels like most quests are exclusively resolved with combat, so I don't feel I can take a non-combat approach to anything, and if that is an option somewhere, I haven't found it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Skyrim as a result. The combat in the game is also really quite difficult. Instead of being flat turn-based, it's real-time with pause, and I've never played that before, so it took some getting used to. But also it's just really hard. Enemies feel kind of spongy, and my party seems to get killed really easily, even though I'm leveling all the things I think I should be. I'm going to keep playing it, I think. I'm just struggling to get through it a bit, but I do want to finish it. The last 2 months, Sea of Thieves has been pretty intense for me. It's probably the game I've played the most, and in that time I've managed to get enough gold to buy all 3 tiers of captain ships and start doing captain voyages. A friend and I also got lucky with an ancient skeleton, and as a result I had enough ancient coins to both buy an outfit for my capuchin, who is called Marmoset, and to buy a bird, who is now called Vulture. This game is a really interesting little puzzle to me, as one of my biggest interests at the moment is the idea of free play versus instrumental play, which I first encountered in Dan Olsen's fantastic piece Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft, which I'll link in the description because it's definitely worth watching if you're interested in this sort of thing. It's also just a concept I've been mulling on in the background, as there are large sections of free play in Sea of Thieves, and I think that's interesting. I definitely need to do more research on the topic before I produce any of my own writing about it, however. I've spent a couple of evenings on the Outer Wilds this past month, really trying to follow clues and piece together what happened. I'm not sure I yet know for certain what the full story is, but I did manage to see some end credits. I definitely know that I'm not done with the game though, so I'll be keeping at it over October, hopefully. The interesting thing about it was that I found myself thinking a lot about the Outer Wilds through August while I wasn't playing much of anything, and that was what prompted me to sink a few evenings into it. It has this uncanny ability to really stick in my mind when I'm not playing it. You know, like when you're trying to dislodge a piece of popcorn from your tooth, but you just can't quite reach it? It's like that. I'm not sure what more I can say, especially not wanting to spoil anything, but it's a very stop-start game for me. Some evenings I make loads of progress and feel like I'm several steps closer to solving the puzzle, and other evenings I fly around a bunch of times and crash into stuff. This entry randomly coincided with a bunch of people on Twitter.com deciding that Doom Eternal is actually one of the worst Doom games to ever grace our computer screens. I am speaking to you as a game developer, and I am here to say that actually, no, it's amazing. This game is often put next to Ultra Kill, I think because they represent the two opposing paths that can be taken by a modern boomer shooter, one which utilizes the modern computing power available to prioritize exclusively the speed, fluidity and insanity of combat. That's Ultra Kill, and one which splits the computing power between the speed and fluidity of combat with the graphical and environmental fidelity of just making something that looks amazing, and that's Doom Eternal. Now, this isn't to say that these games are completely different, these are just different branches on one tree of design, and neither of these branches is inherently better than the other, just different. I personally didn't get a lot out of the large amounts of exposition, story, or lore which was included in the game. While it fleshed out the world and successfully explained why Earth was getting absolutely buggered, I found myself not caring. I kept waiting for the punchline, where the Doomslayer just walks away because he doesn't care, but with one exception, it never came. It seemed like the Slayer was supposed to be more of a presence in this game, with like backstory and everything, and I just kinda didn't care. Following on from that, it seems like the game spends a lot of time just telling you how cool the Doom guy is, which didn't make any sense to me. I'm playing as the guy. If you just let me bounce around the environment like a tennis ball with high explosive strapped to it, I'll know how cool I am, because I'll be dynamically doing cool shit in gameplay. Speaking of cool as hell, the environments in the game are absolutely astounding, or at least the initial setups for the levels are. Usually the first couple of areas where the combat isn't too intense are absolutely stunning, like really showing off what the environment artists could do. Incredible skyboxes, even the environments that you're in, they blend into the background as this like just astounding view. However, the second half of most levels seem to end up in some slight variation of gunmetal grey corridors. Obviously this isn't a hard and fast rule, and some levels stay cool and interesting, but I just felt there was an overabundance of gunmetal grey corridors for a game which so clearly had incredible environment artists and level designers working on it. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's better than Doom 2016, which either had Sandy Mars, gunmetal grey Mars facility, or the endless flesh, viscera and gore of hell. This has much more contrast and uses more interesting colour palettes. I just think that some of those were wasted on more grey corridors. Whenever a new enemy is introduced, you are immediately slapped in the face with a pop-up describing exactly what that enemy's weakness is and how to exploit it. Now, I'm sure I could turn those off, but the early tutorials which explained what different weapons and mechanics do were really useful, and I wouldn't want to miss out on those. However, being told how to beat every enemy immediately, I just kind of felt my willingness to be creative and experimental in combat was being limited, as well as I just felt talked down to. It also has the worst boss ever put in a video game, literally ever, in the form, that's not true, but a really bad boss in the form of the Gladiator. I refused to get footage of the boss, but it nearly brick-walled me and stopped me playing. Actually fighting it just felt slow and clunky. His telegraphs are similar but inconsistent to those of the Marauder, and once I'd figured out what it was I needed to do, I just got bored and frustrated until I got it done. It wasn't even that I needed to figure out what I needed to do, like the game told me, but yeah, it just wasn't a good boss. I did not enjoy it. The humour of the game is good. There was a bit early on where a train station has been totally overgrown by like blood and flesh into an utterly horrifying corruption of something mundane and ordinary, and right next to it all is a hologram saying, "You may notice a change in scenery." The game was full of little moments like that, and I think every single one of them worked really well. The soundtrack for the game is incredible. It's heavy metal, sure, but in a lot of places it reminded me of Ghost Runner or Cyberpunk, while still containing parts that are quintessentially classic Doom, all while retaining its own identity, which is very hard and very impressive. While I set myself just a few days aside to just play through the game and be done with it, I still found myself exploring and trying to 100% complete levels, which I was much more willing to do because of an absolutely genius feature, which is the option to fast travel to the main locations of the level, but only unlocking that option right at the end. This means that the level designers could make points of no return without disincentivizing exploration, which is just really fucking clever, and I don't see enough people talking about it. So, I know I just ran through a great many reasons and criticisms, dislike of the game. So, I know I just ran through a great many bullet points as to my criticisms of the game, but I ought to clarify that these are all my criticisms of the game, and only a few of the most interesting positive notes. Doom Eternal really is genuinely astounding, and I think from a design perspective, it's very interesting to see how id Software went about modernizing Doom the second time around, how it differs from Doom 2016, Doom 3, and even from the various iterations of classic Doom. It's a series that, for its quintessential image, has a remarkable amount of sway in how each of the game's design focuses change. I picked this up on the Switch, looking to see what all the fuss was about. I did my first run and said to myself, this is stupid. I hate that I can't choose when to activate my abilities, it's really boring to just walk around waiting for things to happen at you, and then I played my second run and a horde of bats flew at me while I had a highly upgraded garlic and my dopamine receptors exploded. That's kind of all I have to say about Vampire Survivors. It's like £3 at any given time. In a lot of ways it's an idle game, and in a lot of ways it's one of the most intense bullet hell horde modes I've ever played, and you should probably just play it. Be cautious, however, as a number of times I've said to myself, just one Vampire Survivors run before bed, and then the sun came up. I wish I could dissect the design of this game, but in some ways there's not much to dissect, and in other ways there's so much I kind of don't know where to start. I might come back to this one because I just need more time to think about it, but then again, I may never talk about it again and quietly sink several thousand hours into it. And that's kind of everything I played over this month. I've played bits of this and that here and there, but nothing much worth talking about. As October's starting, I've started another playthrough of Dishonored 2, but I'm thinking about taking a crack at a horror game this month. I don't play a lot of horror, so that could be fun, but also I might just play through Prey 2017. Sorry again for having to double up. As I say, end of August and start of September was just a rough time, and the few opportunities I had to work on something like this, I didn't have the motivation. So that's kind of it. Got a few things to be playing next month. Not sure what will make it into the video and what won't. We'll see. Hopefully, see you in a month.